I'm joined today by JC Crown. JC is the Senior Business Development Manager for HyperQuant. HyperQuant is working within a space, really overlapping in a few spaces that I talk about frequently. My audience knows that: the world of finance, the world of investment. We talk about crypto. We definitely talk about technology as well. So let's just, to start, JC, give our audience a sense of the space that HyperQuant works within, what HyperQuant does, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about the problems that it solves.
Sure. Thanks, David, for having me on the show. HyperQuant is an automated digital asset management platform that's really changing the space in terms of the quality, especially of the kind of asset management that you could expect on a platform like this.
And one of the, a couple of the areas I want to talk about are volatility. I want to talk about transparency, and really we can go in some of the other directions as well. I mean, I think in crypto, I basically get two primary concerns from people who are interested but are sort of hesitant to get involved. One of those is volatility, particularly when you look at like any one crypto asset. Oftentimes the volatility is just totally off the charts. What is it that can be done to reduce volatility so that people might be more comfortable trading in crypto?
Well, one of the things that HyperQuant does, we have different trading strategies, and one of the ones that we like to utilize, especially if you're more conservative, are called market neutral strategies. So they don't necessarily care if the market is going up or down a lot in one day. They're designed to essentially find inefficiencies in the market and capitalize on that, whether or not the price is going up or down.
What would be like the necessary level of savvy that someone would need to have to use that? Because a lot of the platforms that I've looked at, you need to be pretty skilled in the details of a lot of this stuff. I mean, is this the type of thing where you need to have like your level of expertise in this field, or is it something that's a little more accessible?
A good question. So actually, yeah, I've seen some of our competitors that have automated trading-ish, but you still kind of have to know what you're doing to use them, because you have to tell it what strategy you want to use. They're basically doing what you would have done anyway, just doing it for you. One of the big differences with us, since we have a marketplace for quants, they're able to utilize their algorithms. You're able to license them, and then you don't have to think about any of that. We even have an AI bot on our app that will compile a portfolio of algorithms for you that'll essentially manage all of your risk on the platform.
When you talk about risk management, a lot of times people hear that and they assume, maybe not incorrectly, like in the legacy financial space, that to really have access to those types of services, you've got to be dealing with like a ton of money. You're really sort of like in the top 1% or even a fraction of that, or certainly the top couple percent. Is that the case with a platform like HyperQuant?
So no, we have a number of products from retail investors all the way to hedge funds and institutions. We can manage any amount of capital, and that's one of the other advantages of our platform.
What about fees? I am a big advocate, like on the mutual fund side, I have been advocating for a very long time for ideas that aren't really new. Like I'm a student of people like Ben Graham and Jack Bogle, where the idea is basically you don't try to outperform individual traders. You don't try to actually make so many of those individual decisions. And the idea is you want to limit your cost as much as possible, because over time, fees, transaction fees and management fees, they're basically going to eat up your return. What is the approach as far as fees go with HyperQuant?
Well, one of the advantages that we have as well is we partner directly with exchanges. For example, KuCoin is one of our strategic partners. We're actually helping build their next generation API systems. And part of that, if you've got relationships with exchanges, you can have advantages when it comes to fees and whatnot. So fees are a big cost, and we have ways of managing that.
If somebody is looking to sort of get involved in crypto and they don't understand why, so they know that they are not sort of like up to speed when it comes to managing their own trading. So they want to use some kind of system, some kind of either AI, bot, algorithm, or whatever the case may be. At the base level, why would someone prefer bot trading or automated trading over using human services, whether it's not necessarily them, but like a human trader that might manage their currency?
Sure, another good question. So the bots, I don't know if you've ever heard of like the hands of steel. When it comes to trading, you don't want to get scared out of your position. Bots don't ever get scared. So a good example would be recently, the markets have been very volatile, and we've seen a lot of price action, and in some cases, the price has gone down very rapidly. I've been using HyperQuant bots for about a year now, almost, since 7 months. Anyway, and there was a time when the market had dipped like 20% in a day. It was crazy. And the bot, of course, just held. And I was down on my position on the bot about 20%. And it held for the entire month. And before you knew it, I was back in the green again and didn't lose a thing. Human wouldn't have done that.
Huh. And when it comes to cross-platform and currency management, are there particular currencies that are within the HyperQuant system and ones that are not? Do you work specifically with coins that are on a particular exchange or set of exchanges? Are certain coins just not, you can't manage them within the HyperQuant system or trade them?
There are different strategies. We have strategies that focus on altcoins, strategies that focus on the primary coins like Bitcoin and Ethereum. That all depends on the types of strategies that you're using. And as I said earlier, you can build a portfolio of algorithms so that you're kind of utilizing all of those strategies at once.
What do you think is like the bigger picture future of this space? And this goes beyond HyperQuant, right? I mean, whenever I talk to people working with various projects, there seems to be a sort of fracturing now along a couple of lines when it comes to the bigger picture future of this space. There's those who believe that it's a total house of cards. The exact opposite side is the Bitcoin 1 million crowd. And then what seems to be kind of like the middle ground or consensus position is that a lot of bad projects are sort of going to go away. There will be some consolidation, and that the space will continue, not quite at the rate we're seeing it in terms of new projects, but it will continue, and the technology is sort of here to stay. Are you, like, place yourself on that spectrum if you can?
Sure. I mean, HyperQuant is an ICO, and when it comes to ICOs, it used to be if you told somebody you work with ICOs, they were like, "Wow, that's nice." But now the field has become so crowded and with so many low quality projects. There are a lot of people that just outright dismiss anything with the word ICO attached to it. I think projects like HyperQuant, which have an inherent value other than speculation on a token, with the way our token model is used, and it actually generates an income for the holders. Projects like that that bring real value to the table, that have real utility, should continue to perform well. While I agree that probably 95% of projects out there are going to go to dust. I hate to say that, but I'm very bullish on cryptocurrency in general, especially Bitcoin. If you think about it, there are more than 15 million millionaires in the world. If they all decide they want a single Bitcoin, they're going to have to fight for them, and that's going to be great for the price.
Is that like one of the main ways you look at a project and sort of think about it, which is there something here beyond just like a token that's being traded? Is there something underlying it? And if not, that is sort of the red flag for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to buy a token just so I can hope somebody else decides they want it more than I do later. That's scary to me. And that's kind of like it gets into like Ponzi territory. I'm more interested in owning actual assets that have value in themselves. I don't want to sell my HyperQuant tokens. I want to use them to make an income for myself.
So let's talk about that a little bit in the context of regulation, because so you've got projects where it's like basically pretty clear that it's a token where the value is that someone might pay more than what you paid for it, and that's how you make money. That's sort of a red flag. Then you've got a lot of projects that have specific utility and they're sort of developing a platform, but it is connected to an industry that governments might want to get involved in regulating. And some of the project CEOs and founders I've talked to have sort of said candidly, and why wouldn't they, that yeah, if the government takes a particular regulatory approach on crypto, they may suffer, or that is something that may affect them. When we're talking about automated and AI trading of crypto assets, I'm curious to sort of hear your philosophy on how regulation might impact HyperQuant.
Well, we've been careful for example, the United States has been shutting itself out of this new wave of innovation very effectively by refusing to be clear on what they expect of cryptocurrency and cryptocurrency startups. So HyperQuant, for example, at the moment doesn't deal with American investors, but I think the SEC will come around. I think they need to create new regulations, not the same ones they had before. I mean, if you think of traditional securities, they could have never, when they created those laws, they could have never imagined that somebody would want to use those securities for anything other than, keeping track of how much you own of a company share. I mean, these things are used, for example, HyperQuant as a utility in a software application. That's just not feasible in securities regulation.
I'm really actually interested in the conversation that exists around whether the tokens themselves, and maybe next this will kind of get us into talking about the HyperQuant token and the ICO. There's this big conversation as to whether the token is a security or whether it is kind of like having dollars or euros or it is just an analog to another currency. Is there one answer to that question in your mind, or does it actually depend on the particular token, and different tokens maybe are more like a security and some are more like a currency?
Well, there's more than just that. I wouldn't. My spectrum is probably four-dimensional rather than. So, I mean, you've got different kinds of utilities. So you might have a token that is used in software and doesn't even exchange necessarily value, other than the fact that it exists. I mean, and it's inherently valuable in itself. But then you have things which are used, as you said, as a currency, which is just basically, used as a commodity in a sense. But when I think of a security, though, I think of more towards equity. And that's what XRP is arguing, that they're not a security because they don't provide any equity. That's an interesting argument. If they're successful, that'll have big implications for the space. I don't know if there will be, though.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it just seems like it sounds like one of those issues where people glaze over when they hear about it, but it's so important to sort of the underlying stability of this world, which is how are some of these assets classified? Are they even assets in sort of that traditional sense? Let's talk a little bit about the HyperQuant token. Give us a sense of, number one, exactly what the token does in the ecosystem, and then maybe also tell us about the stages of the ICO.
Sure. So the token is used for licensing strategies. This is what I mentioned before. We had our different quants that will list their algorithms on our platform. So you can license those using the token, which is how the quants get paid. You also need to be holding the token to access trade with more capital. And that's one of the exciting aspects of the token to me, because for the people that have used the what we call our test bots, we've got quite a bit of Bitcoin being traded on right now on our early algorithms, as we test our software. But the one thing I always hear from these guys is, well, how much can I put more? Can I put more money on it? And then the answer will be in the public, once the platform goes public, well, sure, if you have more tokens. So I think that's a good way of gating the ecosystem so that we can protect it from degradation. That's the fear with any algorithm, is that it'll have too much capital on it, and that can cause degradation. So
yeah, that's actually, I mean, I don't know how much you follow like Vanguard investments, and I've talked about how I think Vanguard is one of the better places if you're looking for low fees holding for the long term. There is a huge, as money pours into Vanguard and people say, most of those traders that charge me 1% or 2% for the year, plus I'm paying short-term capital gains taxes, I'm not actually better off than just paying 0.05% to Vanguard. There's a mathematical exploration of whether the index fund becomes less of an attractive vehicle if everybody is in index funds, sort of like as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it seems like at some point that a similar, an analogous situation to that will exist within crypto.
Well, we're already at a point now where I think 80% of all the trades are being done by bots. So you've got to be the best to make money, and I think we are.
Give us just a quick overview in the last bit of time that we have in terms of the stages of the ICO, so people know what's going on.
So we're about to start our public sale on the 30th. Really excited about that. And then we'll have a software beta shortly after that.
What is there any more roadmap points in terms of the rest of 2018 or 2019 you can tell us about, or any development plans, anything else really?
Sure. So we have right now we have a mobile app that's being developed. We have our financial advisor, AI-driven. It's in development. Most of these things should be hopefully done before the end of the year. Our beta on our platform will be shortly after the public ICO, and then hopefully around 2019. I don't want to make any promises. We can go live on the full platform.
We've been speaking with JC Crown. He's the Senior Business Development Manager for HyperQuant. You can learn more about the project using the links in the video description. Much more to learn, certainly, about this industry and HyperQuant specifically. JC, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thanks. Pleasure.